Hello, this is Mike Ballard with Timney Triggers, and I'm here today to show you how easy it is to install our new Alpha trigger on Smith & Wesson M&P pistols. First thing you want to do is remove the magazine, check the chamber that it's unloaded, drop the striker, remove the magazine or any ammunition from the work area, and you're ready to begin. In your kit, you're going to have a 16th inch punch, a .050 Allen wrench, which I've assembled here, your trigger, a cheater pin, the sear, and the firing pin safety. Using a suitable bench block that's non-marring, you're going to want to drift out some pins. I use a 3/32 punch, and I'm going to drift out the very front pin first here. Now while you're at it, you can go ahead and do the very rear pin. This holds your sear pack in place. Now go ahead and go to your trigger pin and drift that one out. Now that trigger pin is a flanged pin. It's got a flange on one end. Make sure not to lose any of your pins. You're going to need all of them for reinstallation. Alright, next you're going to be removing your frame rails, trigger, and fire control group back here. So you're going to pry up on the fire control group. I usually will pull the trigger a little bit as I'm pulling it up so it can rotate up and out. Go ahead and set that aside. Next you're going to pull the front rail out. I usually get under the rail a little bit and give a little pry up to get it started, and then pull out your front frame rail and remove your slide stop and original trigger. At this point your frame should be completely stripped except for your magazine release and your slide stop detent. Okay, you're going to want to drift out your pivot pin from the trigger. So I usually flip this over. It's got a flat side here, and I'll use a 16th inch punch, which is included in the kit. And you're going to go ahead and line up this pin and just drift it out. You're going to remove your trigger shoe here, set it aside. Okay, next you're going to take your Timney trigger and the .050 Allen wrench, which was included in the kit, and you're going to remove this small .050 threaded post. I'm actually going to back it out about 1/8 of an inch. That just gives you enough room through this slot for the OEM trigger bar to fit into place. You're going to put it in like this, and then you're going to get your Allen in the hole here, and then look at the other side, line up the hole, and then go ahead and thread that post right through, and then snug it up. Okay, now we're going to work with your rear frame rail here and your sear pack, and we're going to take and push this pin out to the left. We're going to be putting the sear in. Now you got to be careful because under this sear there's a spring-loaded plunger, a small spring and a plunger. So when you push this out, if you remove this all the way without something holding it, that'll shoot off, and that's not what you want. So I go ahead and just push the punch all the way through, remove the pin and set it aside, and then I'll put a little bit of pressure on the sear with my thumb, remove the punch there, and then just gently remove the sear. And if you do it real gently, like that, plunger will stay in place. Now there's also this little pawl that'll have to be put back in, but we'll do that after we get the sear put in place. Okay, so you take your Timney sear and you're going to put it in place like so. Now you'll know you've got it right if the cam lobe is on this side over here. You'll see this little teardrop shaped cam lobe pushing towards the right hand side. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and push that plunger down. You're going to take your flanged pin here and you're going to go ahead and reinsert it back to the hole, line up the sear, and push the pin all the way through. Okay, so now you've got your sear captured under the spring. Make sure that it moves. Now we're going to put that pawl back in. So I'm going to push this pin back just on the opposite side of that slot. just like so. This pawl goes in where this fork looking area here is going to go on either side of that teardrop, and then rotate it down and push your pin through, just like so. Simple. Okay, now we're going to be installing the firing pin safety. Now this is a little bit trickier, is that you have to remove the rear sight from your handgun. Now there's a small screw on the top. It's a 5/64 on this model, but I have seen this screw be different sizes. So you want to get the appropriate driver and go ahead and remove this screw all the way. Now this can be driven out with a brass punch, but you got to be very careful. It's very tight, and you don't want to scratch up your slide or your sight or anything. So I highly recommend you using a sight tool to push out this sight. There's various ones available on the net, but we've got a really nice gunsmith style one here that I'm going to use. So I'm going to get this frame installed in the tool, and I'll be right back. All right, we're back. I've got this slide installed in this tool. Now if you do use a tool like this, you got to remember you have to remove your barrel and recoil spring in order to fit this in here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to drift this out. Now this sight always wants to go from left to right when you're removing it. So I'm going to push it this way, okay? And watch here as that sight just moves over. And out. There we go. Okay, and you can see here I've removed the sight, and you can see there's a little spring-loaded plunger here. You're going to remove that, and there's a little spring. Don't lose them. And then you're going to go ahead and flip your slide over, and you might have to wiggle the striker a little bit. You're going to go ahead and push out that firing pin block safety. That's the OEM. And you're going to go ahead and take your new Timney firing pin safety and just drop it right back into place from the top here. Make sure it's fully seated. See it protruding from the bottom. And then you're going to take your spring and plunger and reinstall it in the top. At this point, what I usually will do is take the sight, depress the plunger, and then start the sight from the side. You should be able to get it to go over the plunger and push it in a little ways before it starts engaging. Now you're going to need to use the sight tool to press this in, or a brass punch, just being very careful not to scratch up your slide or your sight. Okay, now that I've got the sight back in place, I'm going to use this sight tool to go ahead and center this sight back up on the frame. Now, one trick you can use, a gunsmith trick, is you just take a pencil before you remove the sight and draw a little line across from the sight onto your slide. And as long as you don't wipe that little pencil mark off, you can use that pencil mark as an alignment guide to get you centered back up. All right, I'm also going to show you removing the sight with a brass punch. You can see here I put a couple layers of masking tape to protect the slide, and I'm going to use this brass punch. Of course, if you do slip off and get some brass on the slide, it will, wipe off with a little bit of gun solvent. The same thing to go with the sight here. I'm going to put a couple layers of masking tape on the sight itself. I'm just going to put them right here where I'm going to be making contact with it. The punch will just drive this tape through. You just want to make sure that you can get lined up on the sight. You're going to want to use a brass punch, and you got to be kind of heavy-handed on this because it takes quite a bit of force to move it. But I'm going to set this thing right here on this shelf on an angle, and I'm going to drive this sight out of the frame. Just like so. So same thing, driving it back in. You're going to want to put some tape on the other side to protect it. You're going to want to go back in the same way it came out. So it goes out from left to right. It comes back in from right to left. I've compressed the plunger. I've put the sight into place. I'm going to put some masking tape on the slide just to protect it from a glancing blow. And I'm going to put a little tape on the side of the sight here And I'm going to drift it back in place with this brass punch. All right, with your sight reinstalled, you're going to go ahead and put your screw back in that you removed previously. Tighten that up well. Okay, so you can see here the spring has fallen off the trigger bar. So I'm just going to take the hook of the spring here and go over the top of the loop for the trigger bar and flip it over. So it's going to be sitting back in there just like so. Okay, now what we're going to do here is we're going to set this up as a unit to install. There's the cheater pin that I showed you earlier, and we're going to line that up. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take our slide stop, our trigger bar trigger, spring assembly, and we're going to go ahead and set all this stuff together with the trigger bar right and proud here. You're going to install your cheater pin from the left to the right, and it should go through the slide stop and then through the trigger and then through the spring and through the other side of the slide stop, just like so. Okay, so you've got this unit now that we're going to install into your frame. Now what I'll usually do is go ahead and push this slide stop down so it locks into the detent. And then you're going to take your frame rail and you're going to make sure that your lever is pointing down and is also pushed fully into the assembly. You're going to install it straight down over the trigger, push it fully into place, just like so. Okay? At this point now, you're going to take your flanged pin, which was the trigger pin that we had removed earlier, this guy right here, and we're going to install it. And what you're going to do is you're going to wiggle your trigger a little bit, you're going to push the pin through, and you should see the cheater pin protrude from the other side. Then I'll take a punch or other tool and push that pin flush with the side of the frame. Okay, now I'll go ahead and install this front pin right now as well. Install it from this side. I'll drive it into place. Finish off with a punch. Now these will press into place as well, but hammer just makes it a little bit easier to tap it in. Now we're going to install our sear pack. I'll pull the trigger and lift the trigger bar up out of the way. There's a small cavity that the trigger bar can fit into. Slide back into place, and then lower the whole unit down into the pistol and press it into place. Now we're going to take our pin that was removed earlier. We're going to go ahead and reinstall it. Like I said, you can just push these pins into place. They're not hard to push. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and line this up. Bring the slide back. I'll lock the slide back into place. Push this lever back into place. Drop the slide and experience that legendary Timney trigger feel for your Smith & Wesson M&Ps. If you have any questions, you can call our tech support. If you don't feel comfortable performing any of these installations or operations I showed you here today, we recommend you find a reputable gunsmith to install this trigger for you. This video was intended as a supplement to the written instructions that were included with your trigger.